Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to the Global Brief by OneRead.news, where we present you information from all over the globe. Our whole goal here is to take some of the world's biggest headlines, I'm talking about 19 major stories today, and actually connect the dots so you can get a much clearer picture of what's really going on out there. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're breaking down the world into three parts. First, we'll hit the global flashpoints. Then, we'll dig into the power, policy, and purses. You know, the money and rules behind it all. And finally, we'll look at the human equation, which is all about how this stuff actually affects us as people.
All right, first up, global flashpoints. Think of this as our look at where the geopolitical tectonic plates are really grinding against each other. And you know, it's not always about straight-up warfare anymore. We're talking about military posturing, deep internal fractures within countries, and the redrawing of alliances happening right before our eyes.
So, let's kick things off in the Caribbean. We've got a classic he said, she said, but on a global scale. On one side, you have the United States saying, hey, this is just a necessary anti-cartel operation. Nothing to see here, just cleaning up. But on the other side, Venezuela is looking at those same ships and saying, no, this looks like a prelude to a full-blown invasion, and they're mobilizing their military because of it. This is just a perfect snapshot of modern geopolitics, isn't it? It's all about the narrative. It's a high-stakes chess match where the story you spin can be way more powerful than the actual moves you make on the board.
And this idea of complex, messy conflicts, well, it's everywhere. The very nature of what we call war is evolving. I mean, look at Colombia. You've got FARC dissidents using villagers as literal human shields. Why? To demand the body of a slain rebel. It's putting this incredibly fragile 2016 peace deal to the absolute test. Then jump over to Israel. The biggest pressure on the government isn't coming from another country, it's coming from its own citizens blocking highways, demanding a hostage deal. The front line is now internal. And then you have the DR Congo, where regional peace efforts have kind of stalled out. So who steps in? Doha, Qatar, a global player is now mediating a major African conflict. The battlefield isn't a clean line on a map anymore. It's asymmetric, it's complex, and it's happening inside and outside of national borders.
So with all this chaos and shifting ground, what do? You find some friends, right? Nations aren't just sitting back and watching this happen. They are actively choosing sides, they're deepening partnerships, and they're trying to figure out their place in a world that, frankly, doesn't have one single superpower calling all the shots anymore. It's a multipolar world, and everyone's scrambling to build their team.
And you can see this team-building exercise playing out all over the globe. Look at the Indo-Pacific. The Philippines and Australia are forging a brand new defense pact, complete with joint military exercises. And let's be real, this is all about creating what some are calling a latticework of alliances to counter China's growing influence. It's not one big NATO-style bloc, but a series of smaller, interconnected partnerships. Then you have the US and South Korea. Their presidents get together, supposedly to talk about trade, but the conversation takes a hard left turn into who actually owns the land that US military bases are sitting on. A tiny detail that reveals huge underlying tensions in a decades-old alliance. And maybe the most frightening one for the future, look at Pakistan and India. Tensions are flaring up, not over territory or ideology, but over water. India releases excess river water, and suddenly Pakistan has to evacuate its citizens. This is a terrifying preview of future conflicts driven by climate change, where a shared resource becomes a weapon.
Okay, so we've seen the conflicts on the ground, but what's driving all of this? Let's pull back the curtain a bit, because behind every soldier and every diplomat's handshake, there are these massive, invisible systems at play. Economics, policy, and straight-up cash. This is the power, policy, and purses section. This is where we follow the money and the rules that are really shaping our world.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Welcome to the digital Cold War. Brussels exports rules, Washington exports threats. We're smack in the middle of a battle for control over our digital lives. On one side, you have the European Union, basically saying, we have a sovereign right to regulate big tech, and they're rolling out their big Digital Services Act to prove it. They're exporting their rulebook. On the other side, you've got Washington, home of most of these tech giants, basically saying, not so fast, and they're threatening tariffs. This isn't just some boring trade squabble. It's a fundamental fight over who gets to write the rules for the internet for the next century. It's a whole new kind of Cold War.
Okay, take a good look at this number. 111%. Just let that sink in for a second. What is this? Well, this is Senegal's brand new, freshly revised debt-to-GDP ratio for 2023. And, spoiler alert, that is not a good number.
So why does that 111% matter so much? Well, because this wasn't just a typo in a spreadsheet. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, went in and discovered huge amounts of government debt that just wasn't on the books. It was undisclosed. They're calling it a governance shock, and that's the key phrase. This isn't an accounting error, it's a fundamental crisis of transparency. It shatters the trust between a government, its people, and the entire global financial system. And the bill for that broken trust? It just came due. And as we saw, it is absolutely massive.
This slide just brilliantly illustrates the two very different roles an organization like the IMF can play. It's like having a school inspector come to visit. For a country like Chile, which has its act together, the IMF visit is a glowing report card. They get a seal of good housekeeping, their credit line is reaffirmed, and all the international investors breathe a sigh of relief. But for Senegal, that same inspector came in, looked under the rug, and found a huge mess. It becomes a harsh public spotlight on some really deep governance failures. So the IMF can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. It's both a partner and a referee. And which version shows up at your door? Well, that really depends on how you've been running things.
All right, let's jump over to the US, where there's this really weird and kind of dangerous disconnect happening. You look at Wall Street, the stock market's been rallying, things look great on paper. But then you talk to actual people on Main Street, and their confidence is in the tank. It's been falling for 8 straight months, mostly because people are getting really nervous about the job market. You have 2 completely different stories being told about the same economy. And that kind of divergence, it can't last forever. Something's got to give. Eventually, reality is going to catch up to one of these narratives.
Okay, so we've talked big picture. We've talked geopolitics, we've talked about global finance, but let's bring this all down to earth. How does all this stuff, these massive trends, actually affect you and me? How does it impact our health, our societies, our future? This is what we call the human equation. This is where it gets personal.
And man, when you look at public health right now, you see the full spectrum of challenges. In Botswana, it's a full-blown crisis. They've declared a public health emergency because they've run out of essential medicines. The system is collapsing. At the same time, you have health ministers from 47 African nations meeting, and they're making a huge strategic shift. They're saying, look, we can't just keep fighting one disease at a time. We have to build resilient, robust systems that can handle whatever comes next. That's long-term thinking. And then, for a dose of pure nightmare fuel, you've got a case of a rare, flesh-eating screwworm detected in a traveler in the USA. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, but it's a very real, very terrifying reminder of why having a top-notch disease surveillance network is absolutely critical.
But it's not all doom and gloom and flesh-eating worms, I promise. There is some absolutely incredible progress happening. The European Commission just gave the green light to an HIV prevention drug that is just a single shot twice a year. Let's just pause and think about that journey. In the 1980s, an HIV diagnosis was a death sentence. By the 2000s, it was a chronic condition managed by a daily pill, which was amazing. And now, a biannual shot. In just a few decades, science has taken one of humanity's greatest monsters and turned it into a manageable nuisance. That is a monumental, breathtaking victory for public health.
And here's a question that every society has to ask itself, and it's being asked very, very loudly in Malaysia right now. The son of a former prime minister was arrested with heroin. Now, this isn't just another drug bust. This has become a national test case. The entire country is watching to see what happens. Will the justice system treat him like any other citizen? Or will we see a classic case of elite impunity, where the rich and powerful play by a different set of rules? The answer will say a lot about the soul of their nation.
Let's wrap up with a look at innovation, the blueprints for our future. It's kind of cool. 234 years ago today, a guy named John Fitch got a patent for the steamboat. One piece of paper that would go on to completely revolutionize transport and trade and, change the world. Fast forward to the present. In remote parts of South America, they're rolling out centimeter-level GPS. What does that mean? It means a whole new revolution in precision automated agriculture. We're talking robotic tractors, hyper-efficient farms. From a patent for a boat powered by steam to a satellite service for robotic farms, it's a great reminder that these are the kinds of innovations that are quietly but relentlessly building the world of tomorrow.
And you know what? After all that heavy talk of geopolitics and financial shocks, sometimes you just need some good news. And this quote, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married," is just perfect. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce have announced they're engaged. And amidst all the global complexity, sometimes a story is just a happy story. So let's just take a moment of pure celebration to round things out.
So let's bring it all together. What does this all add up to? We've covered a ton of ground today, right? We've seen military standoffs, the start of a digital Cold War, a massive financial shock, and absolutely stunning medical breakthroughs. We started this by saying we wanted to connect the dots. So the final question, we're going to leave it with you. As you look at all these different pieces on the board, where do you see the most powerful connections? Where are the links that are really going to forge the world of tomorrow?
We sincerely hope that by bringing you just the facts, free from bias and any emotional spin, we've empowered you to form your own clear understanding of the world. If you value this approach, please share this with your friends and family. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. GMT. Your support really helps our mission to provide factual, condensed news. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. GMT.